May 30th, 2002.
Ground Zero. A day to honor the victims, to show appreciation for the cleanup and recovery effort, and a day to look back at the heroes.
Immediately after the attack, we were receiving a lot of 911 calls that there was a train in the tunnel.
We knew right away it was a terrorist attack and that there would be massive evacuations necessary.
And a day for the heroes to look ahead.
I'm going to be involved in a lot of other programs, you know, the memorial, the family assistance.
Tonight, Ground Zero closes, remembering 9/11.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
There are many times when words fail. Not many times, though, that there is a collective judgment to say nothing. This morning marked one of those very rare occasions. There were plenty of dignitaries on hand to mark the end of the recovery and cleanup efforts at Ground Zero today, but they all showed the wisdom and good taste to remain silent. A New York City fireman rang a bell in 4 sets of 5 chimes. The traditional code for a fallen comrade. Only today, it served as a remembrance for 343 firemen who died in the rescue effort last September 11th. The chimes also commemorated the loss of all 2,823 people who died in the World Trade Center disaster. Of those, more than 1,600 were never found. Later in this broadcast, I'll be talking to one of the firemen who has worked at the site almost every day since 9/11. He lost a son there. He was also a firefighter. First, though, while it may be difficult to believe, there are still some stories of rescue and heroism that have not been told yet. The bulk of this program will be devoted to 2 such stories.
I'm Captain Rick Thornton at New York Waterway. Been here about 12 years. I was stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and I used to do the naval tour of the harbor and give all the tourists the 2-hour tour around Pearl Harbor. And we used to speak of the calm Sunday morning on December 7th that erupted in total confusion and chaos. And I used to always wonder what that was like to go from, you know, a Sunday morning routine and then everything, goes to hell. We were doing the commuter run from Weehawken, New Jersey, over to 38th Street in Manhattan, and it was your typical day. We were bringing the bulk of our people from Jersey to their jobs in New York. It was one of those spectacular morning sunrises over New York, and it just was routine. Everything was proceeding pretty much as the day before had gone.
World Financial, folks, World Financial.
At about 8:45 or so, we started to see the smoke and from the first plane after it had hit, and we heard the commuters coming on board. They had been listening to the news on their car radios, and they said a plane had hit the first tower. And we saw the second plane hit. We knew right away it was a terrorist attack, and that there would be massive evacuations necessary.
I met a friend of mine from my town who I play some softball with, and he said, "Hey, Jim, I've got my car parked over in Jersey City. Why don't we try to catch one of those ferries and get out of here?"
So we went downtown full speed, and we went down to assist our fleet that's stationed down at the World Financial Center area. So we wanted to get as many boats down there as possible.
People were kind of running in all different directions, but I did not remember anybody screaming or carrying on, just people moving, people being ushered by law enforcement to go in one direction or another.
People who were evacuating, but evacuating in a fairly orderly fashion. They knew there was a problem. They knew that there was fire, but they were out of the fire. Now they were going to their normal response was, I'll go to the ferry. I'll go back the way I came this morning. That changed after the second plane hit.
I arrived downtown when both towers were just totally immersed in flame, and there were so many wakes because everybody was pretty much full throttle racing to one point or to the other. So there were lots of wakes. The water was pretty much churned up, and in such a small area, having so many boats in close proximity, it really made things pretty rough.
It wasn't a normal docking because all the places that we docked at were not docks. We were physically just pulling the boat up to the wall in some cases.
We nosed in against the stone quay wall right here, and that's when people just started, they wanted rescue. They were not going to be denied.
I remember seeing at least 2 or 3 people in the water. We rescued one of them. The others were being tended to by other boats, but the people were lined up all along the docks there.
We tried to calmly load 399 people, which is the capacity of the vessel, and that's when we started to get a lot of the people, the wounded people. I mean, they were smoke-covered, bloody, broken arms and legs, children, no parents.
This was just crowded with people. This was coming from the Winter Garden down this way. This was just a surge of people. One of the things that kept them going was the fact they could see so many boats, so many New York Waterway boats standing off that they knew they were getting on.
We had to control the crowd. I mean, people, once you started loading people, they were literally swarming onto the boat.
There was some measure of blind panic when we backed away from the pier. People would jump towards the boat. So we did take 1 or 2 people that actually leapt from the pier to the handrail of the boat, and then we pulled them aboard. There were people pushing and shoving.
There were boats standing off, 3 or 4 at each of our berths, and they would cycle, and as one would pull away, the next one would pull in.
There were the people that worked for the boats, and they were just not yelling, just saying, let's go, step it up, step it up, step it up. As quick as we get on, the quicker we get over.
So that there were never more than 30 seconds when there wasn't a boat standing by there.
Within a matter of 15 seconds, we were all on the boat that we needed to get on that went across over towards that Colgate clock on the other side in Exchange Place in Jersey City.
We were told that there was a triage center set up at Jersey City, and as we get up behind this barge here, you'll see a giant Colgate clock, and that's where our landing site is for Jersey City, Colgate. Right over there where the large clock is and the Colgate sign, there's a barge right there, and all of our boats are pulling in. Any wounded people were being brought there.
And as we were crossing the river, as everybody was quiet, someone who was sitting nearby had one of those news service pieces on his laptop. He said, well, you know, I've just read that the Pentagon was hit as well. And we were like, oh my God, what is going on here?
And everybody was pretty much in a panic and calling everybody on their cell phone. The towers were both ablaze. We were about here, got a full broadside view of the first tower collapsing in upon itself. And the smoke that just erupted from that, it was a nightmare. And everybody stopped talking on their cell phone. They put the cell phone down. You heard a whimper or something, but for the most part, it was just a stunned silence by the crowd.
When the building came down, that cloud was just rushing this way. People were running in front of the cloud. One of the things I remember, I'm at the top of the ramp, and I'm telling people, slow down, because all I could picture were people just trampling each other, and that was the immediate danger. And people were looking at me like, you got to be nuts to slow us down.
As all the people were streaming off the boat, every one of them thanked us profusely. Thank you, thank you, thank you, as they would walk by. And they said, what are you guys going to do now? And we said, we're going back in there. And at that time, you know, the first tower collapsed. It looked pretty much like, like hell on earth. And the people were like, I can't believe you guys are going back in there. But, you know, that's what we had to do.
Commuters came to the World Trade Center from New Jersey by 2 main routes: above the water on the ferry boats you just saw, and beneath the water on the PATH train that runs under the Hudson River. That part of the story when we come back.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by MasterCard.
In the hours and days immediately following September 11th, the magnitude of the devastation and loss of life was still unknown. For the employees of the Port Authority train system known as the PATH train, it was a particularly frightening time when they didn't know if trains were still trapped below the trade center, perhaps still filled with people. In a desperate attempt to rescue anyone who might still be there, several of the employees risked their own lives. This is their story.
My name is John Flynn. I'm a police sergeant with the Port Authority Police Emergency Service Unit. On September 14th, we came down into the PATH exchange place system. The tunnels were flooded at that particular day. Access from the New York side was virtually impossible due to the amount of rubble and debris. One point that we felt we might be able to gain access would have been from the exchange place, Jersey City side, and make our way in. When this operation was going on, we had water originally right to the platform level. Inside of the tunnel, there were pumps in operation, there were hard pipes set up. It was a constant 24/7 operation at that time to keep the water basically at bay. Immediately after the attack, we were receiving a lot of 911 calls at the site that there was a train in the tunnel, and we were really desperate to find anybody.
We decided that one of the best ways to enter the station would be through the tunnel. Unfortunately, the tunnel was predominantly underwater, so we decided we were going to try to get through it with a raft and in our dry suits.
It was eerie. We were basically going into what we believed, based on some reports, of a train with approximately 500 people on board that train.
We loaded up a flatbed that was run by a diesel engine with a raft and some flashlights, air monitors, ropes. We headed in as far as the flatbed could take us.
There was a lot of pollutants in the water at that time, a lot of the old track bed. We had no idea really what we were facing.
And obviously you couldn't see through the water, and you didn't know if you were going to step into a hole or over some piece of equipment in the track bed.
This was about the point where we loaded our raft off of the train black coffee.
The rafts, I was in there. The rafts inflated and went under the gear.
Myself, Sergeant Flynn, and Officer Toth entered the raft and started paddling our way through the tunnel. As we proceeded through the tunnel, the water was getting higher and higher. It got to a point at mid-tunnel where we were getting close to touching the ceiling of the train tunnel.
Probably about the best point of reference that I can give you. If you look over here, you're going to see two lines of cable running parallel. All right, that was approximately the height of the water. We were pulling ourselves along on those cables as well.
We were, trying to talk to each other to keep ourselves, in tune to what we were doing.
There was some joking, there was some laughing, just to really keep your mind off the actual mission that was underway.
We joked around a little bit about calling the tunnel of love. And I reached over and gave my partner, Officer Toth, a kiss, and we laughed a little bit.
We really didn't know what was on the other side. We really didn't want to get ourselves trapped into our area. As we came to the watermark on top of the tunnel, we did notice that it was starting to recede. Our worst fears were alleviated, that there was no train in here. Because if it had to been in here, we would have had people, noise on this side, people trying to get through the other side, and it wasn't here. We continued on into the south projection.
Well, right here where the tracks go into this hole over here is called the south projection. That's the way we entered the station. This is the way the eastbound trains normally come into from Exchange Place. We entered the station and got up on the platforms and tried to do a search. There was total darkness, there was smoke, there was still some heat from fires. There was a lot of debris from the ceilings. When you walked closer down the platform to the center of the station, the debris came down from where the escalators entered from the main concourse of the World Trade Center, and it was just total debris all the way down into the track level.
And all this equaled up to a lot of eerie sounds, a lot of eerie smells, and somewhat of a little feeling of dread that let's make haste here, and if we have nothing here, then let's get back.
There was a train in the station that was intact except for about 3 cars that were totally crushed from the debris. And we did a search of the train. We did a search of different rooms that we can get to where the PATH employees, they have their locker rooms, they have equipment rooms, and the whole station was evacuated.
It was somewhat bittersweet, just the fact that you were there to do a mission, but there was no mission to perform. The other good side of it was everybody had been evacuated, and we didn't come across 500 people that were trapped.
Today's official end of the work at Ground Zero is a day of complex emotions for the people who have devoted themselves to the cleanup there. When we come back, a conversation with one retired fireman who's been there almost every day. Retired New York City firefighter Lee Ioppi lost his 29-year-old son Jonathan, also a New York City fireman, on September 11th. Lee was one of several volunteers who came to Ground Zero in search of a loved one and virtually never left. Lee recovered Jonathan Ioppi's remains in December, but he has continued to be a presence at Ground Zero, participating in the cleanup and recovery effort nearly every single day. Lee attended today's ceremony that marked the end of that long effort, and I spoke to him earlier this evening from downtown Manhattan. Do you have a feeling that today's ceremony was an appropriate one, Lee?
It was a fabulous ceremony today. It was befitting exactly what happened at this spot. Somewhat of a bittersweet one, though, Ted.
It was all done much more quickly and much more inexpensively, by a factor of several $1 billion, I understand, than anybody thought possible, and I can't help but believe that the emotional contribution that you and all the others made had to play a big role in that. Your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say it played a tremendous role in it. We were blessed. The good Lord couldn't stop what happened here that day, so we can't lose faith in Him. But what He did do is He gave us the best winter we've ever had on record, and a lot of fantastic people that poured their hearts out, their soul out, their blood out to continue this search day in, day out, 7 days a week. And I can't say enough for the men and women that are down below me here. They did a fabulous, fabulous job, and they need to be commended for it.
You and the other guys, Lee, must have talked a little bit about this day and about what comes next. Do you have any sense of how they're going to fill the hours and how they're going to fill that big void in their lives?
No, I honestly do not. I would hope they would get involved in. There's a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of things in place where they could possibly stay involved in family assistance programs, the different groups that have been established that I'm a part of. But Ted, no, I don't know a good answer for that.
An old friend of mine, Hal Bruno, who used to be our political director here and has for many, many years been a volunteer fire department, has been a volunteer fireman, I know, has worked with many of the firemen, and he tells me that a lot of the guys are going through some very bad times. They haven't shown it, they haven't talked about it, we haven't focused on it that much, but tell me about that just a little, if you would.
It's shown its face already, Ted. The strain and pressures of this site behind me here. I won't go into what has happened, but there have been incidents already where the stress, the trauma, the realization. You can't have something like this, especially the fire department. We lost 343 men. I knew 100 of them personally. There were guys out here that know more than 100 of them. Ted, everybody who has a friend that's been working here, they should keep an eye on their friends, and if they see their friends doing something that seems a little irrational, a little out of character, the old true saying about they kicked the dog where they never kicked the dog before, or yelled at the kids where they never yelled at the kids, or the wife, well, maybe they should reach out and because Ted, there will be some repercussion to their psyche after this. There has to be. We just have to be aware of it. Maybe you focusing on something like that in the future might be beneficial.
Look, I know that an awful lot of men and women have been working their hearts out there for a long time. You happen to be the only one who's sitting in front of me right now. So for all of them, let me just say to you, thank you very much, and I hope you can get on with your life and continue to be as strong and useful a man as you've been these last 8.5 months.
Ted, if I could say one thing, I'd like to say thank you to you all. I'd like to say thank you to America, because the outpouring has been absolutely fantastic, and we here in the city would say thank you right back to you all. Thank you.
Lee ILP, thank you. I'll be back with a final thought in a moment. The rescue efforts ended long ago. The recovery process ended some days ago. The cleanup ended in the ceremony today. Plans for the redevelopment of Ground Zero are already underway. But as far as the emotional recovery is concerned, there is, as Lee ILP told us tonight, no end in sight. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.